My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
On the morning of the 20th March 2003, a coalition force of 200,000 men from 4 countries crossed the border into southern Iraq. They would face an estimated army of over 600,000 fully equipped Iraqi soldiers. In the three-pronged assault, the coalition forces steamrolled over every bit of resistance. On April 2nd, in just 12 days, they reached the outskirts of Baghdad and captured the city in a bloody urban combat a week later. With the fall of Tikrit, the hometown of Saddam Hussein, the country was under the control of the coalition forces on April 15th. Up to this point, the coalition forces suffered 240 losses and over 1,000 wounded. Estimates on Iraqi losses sum up to 45,000 combatants. The civilian body count was estimated to be 7,300. Parallel to the events in the south, 70,000 Kurdish Peshmerga in northern Iraq were taking up arms with US Special Forces and thousands of paratroopers to open a second front against Iraqi forces and to eliminate an Islamic terrorist cell. The militant Islamists controlled a small sector of northern Iraq in an area outside of Saddam Hussein's control. At the time of the invasion, they fielded about 600 to 800 fighters, but were driven out of Iraq during Operation Viking Hammer. A notable member of the militant group was the infamous Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, the man who would play a significant role during the upcoming Iraqi insurgency.
Following the defeat in the 1991 Gulf War, Iraq was devastated. Economic sanctions weakened the recovery, and minorities rebelled against the leaders in Baghdad. Despite the circumstances, the country remained in a somewhat stable situation. This would change, however, after 9/11 and the announcement of the war on terror by George W. Bush.
Our enemy is a radical network of terrorists and every government that supports them.
The rationale was that Saddam was a supporter of terrorism and Al-Qaeda. He also planned to acquire weapons of massive destruction. When none of those accusations stuck with the UN Security Council, the US just shifted the rationale to human rights and promoting democracy. While the truth is that a memo written by Donald Rumsfeld as early as 2001 already considered a war against Iraq. It was already decided, regardless of the protest. The government and its institutions were practically non-existent anymore. Security forces have been defeated, but the coalition refused or was unable to fill the power vacuum. The results were massive looting. The Iraq Museum lost over 15,000 valuable items. Stores were plundered for food and goods, but the most serious case was the plundering of weapons and ammo caches. On top of that, some super smart human being came up with a brilliant idea that they should disband the complete military. All intel services, paramilitaries, the reserves, the Ba'athist Party and the National Olympic Committee of Iraq just 1 month later. From one day to another, at least 250,000 up to 1 million men were let go. Men that knew how to run a military organization, had military, even special forces training, and had access to firearms. Men that just lost their friends in combat and were angered by the losses and the defeat. What could possibly go wrong?
A rising number of assaults towards US troops was noticed to take place in the Sunni Triangle, an area between Baghdad, Tikrit and Ramadi, and also a stronghold of the Sunni Muslim Ba'athist Party under Saddam. While the first assaults were dilettantish, the insurgents began quickly to adopt more complex strategies. Better planned ambushes and the sheer number of assaults, which increased to 50 per day, would take a heavy toll on US forces. The tragic zenith was reached in October 2003, when 82 men were killed and 337 wounded during the month. While counterinsurgency showed success and even captured Saddam Hussein, Pandora's box has already been opened. While the resistance would at first be only confined to Sunni regions of Iraq, sheer dissatisfaction was growing. The Mahdi army, led by the influential Muqtada al-Sadr, grew up to 10,000 men and challenged the coalition forces in the south of Iraq. On April 4, 2004, The Mahdi army coordinated an assault on multiple cities simultaneously and fought with security forces for weeks to come. Throughout 2004, the coalition forces were retaking guerrilla strongholds all over Iraq. By the end of the year, the US military reported that they captured at least 15,000 guerrillas, while 848 were killed. The number of Iraqi civilian and security forces casualties during that time is believed to be in the thousands. After al-Zarqawi barely escaped with his life, he returned to Iraq and pledged allegiance to the Al-Qaeda network. The Sunni Islamic terror organization targeted dozens of holy Shia relics and single-handedly turned the insurgency into a Sunni-Shia civil war, with the coalition forces between the front lines. The ultimate provocation happened on February 22, 2006, when Sunni rebels stormed the Al-Askari mosque in Samarra, holy to the Shia Muslims, and partially destroyed the over 1,000-year-old building through explosives. The bombing caused unprecedented anger amongst the Shia majority, prompting death squads, largely from the Mahdi army, to roam the streets of Baghdad and other major cities, attacking Sunni mosques, killing Sunni civilians, and murdering Sunni clerics in revenge. The Sunni insurgents soon organized their own resistance and death squads and began further revenge killings, causing a spiral of violence that threatened to take the country into a full-blown civil war. By June 2006, the Iraqi government reported 100 civilian casualties per day. Al-Zarqawi's karma would eventually catch up on him. His atrocities turned friends into foes, and one of them would tip American intelligence. On June 7, 2006, Zarqawi was killed in a safe house by an airstrike.
As the years passed by, coalition efforts showed success. Iraq went from a failed state to a somewhat stable country, but at a high price. At the peak in 2007, 180,000 troops were stationed in Iraq, but still low-level violence was present. However, after 4 years of bloodshed and casualties, the American public began to favor a withdrawal. The US troops left Iraq on the 18th of December 2011. During the occupation, the international coalition lost 4,825 servicemen and over 32,000 were wounded. Iraqi security forces had lost 18,000 men and over 40,000 were wounded. Insurgency losses are estimated up to 38,000 and up to 120,000 were detained. Estimates on the civilian body count ranged from 100,000 to over 650,000 casualties. 2 million Iraqis fled the country. 1.7 million have been internally displaced. The total cost of the war was at minimum $1.7 trillion. The insurgency escalated again between the Sunni and the Shia militias almost immediately after the withdrawal of the coalition. The conflict merged with the Syrian civil war and would not be settled until the 9th December 2017, 14 years and 5 months after the invasion. The legality of the Iraq invasion has been challenged on numerous occasions. Several prominent supporters have publicly and privately cast doubts on its legality. Not a single instigator has been held accountable for the atrocities until this day.
The decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of Iraq. I mean, of Ukraine. Iraq, too. Anyway.